Tonight on Unscripted, we step into one of the most fascinating frontiers emerging in the digital economy, the place where blockchain stops being just a concept on a screen and begins interacting with the physical world around us. For years, conversations in crypto have revolved around tokens, charts, speculation, and market cycles. But quietly, behind the noise, another movement has been building, one focused on infrastructure, on networks, on the idea that everyday people can participate in building the systems that power the modern world. Imagine a future where mapping, wireless networks, storage, computing power, and real world data aren't controlled by a handful of centralized corporations, but instead are powered by distributed communities across the globe, where individuals deploy hardware, contribute resources, and become active participants in building the backbone of the digital age. That vision sits at the heart of growing movement known as decentralized physical infrastructure networks, or DePIN. Tonight's guest has become one of the voices helping people understand this shift, not just from a theoretical perspective, but from ground level. Through daily live streams, market commentary, community spaces, and hands on development of infrastructure, they've built a platform focused on education, discussion, and connecting macro events with what's happening inside the crypto ecosystem. Their work doesn't just look at blockchain through the lens of price charts, it explores how digital global market commodities, geopolitics, and emergent technologies intersect with decentralized infrastructure. From inflation reports and oil markets to token incentives and drone power mapping networks, they've constantly asking a bigger question. What happens when the digital world and the physical world begin to merge through decentralized systems? Through their YouTube channel, live spaces, and daily commentary across social platforms, they've built a community of listeners, builders, and curious minds who are trying to understand where this technology is going and how everyday people can participate in it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the rise of DePIN, the macro forces shaping the markets, what it really means to deploy infrastructure in decentralized network, and why some believe this sector could become one of the most important narratives in crypto's next chapter. So tonight we go unscripted with the one and only DePIN connection.
Hello, Leslie. How are you?
Good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing really well, and I'm really happy to be on and talk about DePIN and the broader markets. Of course, there's a lot going on, but just super excited to be on.
Just a lot of craziness. Before we get started into the craziness that is building on the blockchain and in crypto, I want to understand a little bit more. Who is DePIN? Behind the handle and the live streams, who are you as a person off of cameras?
Sure. I guess I could talk to you a little bit more about my background before crypto and what we led into, what I'm doing today. So I started off, I was a finance major and I was in the solar industry for quite some time, selling solar. And then I ended up moving to DC and got a job in the drone service space. Still working in solar, though. We were doing inspections on utility scale solar. So using thermal sensors on drones to detect heat differentials on panels to see where there were issues with panels. So if sunlight was hitting it, it wasn't converting to energy properly, heat would build up in that spot. We are also using drones to measure rooftops with something called photogrammetry, where you would take a lot of pictures and stitch it together. You'd get a high-res image and be able to get measurements off of that. So did that for a little bit over a year in DC, then moved to Chicago, where I live today. Still in the solar space. I was managing a large channel for a solar manufacturer. And my job was to work with business owners of solar companies, get them to sell our product at a 30% premium exclusively, so not sell other products, and then train their sales reps on how to sell on value, and then work with them on pricing strategy, marketing strategy, and show how they could actually be more profitable selling a higher quality product at a higher price point. And my goal or my task was to get us 20% market share, which I did. I got us from 3 to a little bit over 20%. Got us up to about 120 million or so a year in revenue. And towards the end of that, I was like, man, I want to learn about crypto. So, and I'd always wanted to know. I'd had friends tell me about, Bitcoin over the years. And for me to really grasp something and dive in, I have to truly understand it. So I took some blockchain courses on Udemy, and it was kind of like that light bulb moment for me where it's like, man, this makes a lot of sense. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity here, kind of like what we saw with the .com era. I was a little bit young then to take advantage of those opportunities then, but I kind of see crypto as kind of in that same category right now. And I really started diving in every day after work, trying to understand the space better. And that's when I came across DePIN. And because I was looking for something that resonated with me, and there's a lot in crypto where it was hard for me to really comprehend like the business case. Like the technology has always been cool, like the blockchain technology and some of the stuff happening with DeFi back then, but I was having a hard time grasping the valuations of some of these projects. And DePIN to me made a lot of sense. I came across a project called Helium. I'm sure we'll talk about more tonight, but essentially, for people watching, DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. And it's essentially a way to crowdsource participation, whether it's building out infrastructure or collecting data and using tokens to incentivize participants. So you more or less get ownership or a stake in the company or project by helping build it out. So to me, that really resonated with me, and really went full in on that and built out a full business around it, which we'll get into more details on. But I built several of these businesses, and I was out meeting with one of the founders out in San Francisco of one of these projects, and he was asking me, like, how are you being so successful in building out your fleet? In this case, it was a project where you put a dash cam in your windshield to collect data. They were building the freshest map that exists in the world with that data. They've sold it since to a lot of Web 2 customers. But I built out a fleet just pitching my Uber and Lyft drivers because I knew we needed participants that drove a lot. And meeting with him, I realized, okay, I'm doing something that I think others would be interested in. I could help them. And I decided at that point when I was out there to start up a YouTube channel to try to spread the word. And from there, I've just kind of built out my platform. I interview a lot of founders. I do a lot of tutorials, a lot of analysis, live streams, etc. And that kind of brings us to where we are today.
Okay, I think I might remember you because, you mentioned someone that we know mutually. And then you mentioned right now the product where you put them in cars and you were earning, right? So were you in Denver a few years ago? Because I think I did a recording of a DePIN, when it was unpopular, and it is very similar to what you're describing, and I still have that interview that has not been posted, and I think that would be a good flashback.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, it probably was the project was Hive Mapper, so it's probably with them. I would imagine if it was at ETH Denver, they might have been there.
I think it was about 3 years ago.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of when they were starting, so what I've done with several of these projects is, I find a project that I think is super interesting, and I decide if I can build a business off of it, or if it's just something investable, right? In this case, it's like, okay, if you drive a lot and you drive differentiated routes in certain areas where it's high value areas, you could earn a good amount. And I thought, okay, I can do this myself, but I'm not a full-time driver. I can find drivers that are on the road a lot and pitch this to them and basically place a camera with them, split the rewards with them, and, scale that, and set up an LLC, all of that, and set up my own business around it. And so I did scale that up to about 100 drivers in North America and South America. mostly Uber and Lyft drivers, some like, delivery drivers and stuff too. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same project that you interviewed back then.
I am going to have to dig into my archive, look for that project, and then either post it or send it to you, for a throwback Thursday. But you do have you have a good bio here, good history. Was trying to dig some personal stuff, like typically the way that I do. I'm like, but you are solid when it comes to, your private information. I'm typically really great at digging that. But was there a moment in your life where something shifted internally? It's like you're doing what you were doing, and then it's like you started learning about crypto, building here, where you realized the path you were on was going to be different than most people, or the journey that you were on?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first started dabbling in crypto, I was still in my full-time job, and I became kind of obsessed with it because I thought there's just such an opportunity there. And I started building out these side businesses. It ended up being like two full-time jobs, really. It was taking up so much time, and it was a lot to manage. And I would say it was when I was out in San Francisco and I was at the office, and it was when I was talking to that founder, and he was asking me like, "Hey, we have other people that are trying to do what you're doing, but they're not successful like you have been with it, and we want to understand, like, pick your brain, like, how are you doing it?" And I think it was at that moment where I realized, okay, I'm doing something different. And I think that people could find value in this. And at that point, I was just building out like, oh, I think everyone's probably doing this. I didn't realize that what I was doing was any different than anyone else. And I remember like being at the wedding, because that's what I was out there for a wedding, and I stopped into the office. And I remember thinking like, I should start up a channel, and I had no idea how to like record or edit videos. I took a course on that and figured all that out. But I'd say that was the moment that I realized, that was a turning point that kind of led me to eventually leaving my full-time job and doing this full time. And then, here we are a couple of years later, I'm interviewing founders of projects that, I was investing in when I first got into crypto. I had no idea I'd ever be like interviewing them. It's pretty wild, actually.
That is, you never know the journey that you are going to take when you are in this crypto world. Many people talk about decentralization as technology. Do you see decentralization as something deeper, almost like a philosophical about how society should function?
I think that we will see more and more decentralization in our lives for sure.
Mhm.
But I'm not like a decentralization like maxi by any means. Like, I think we'll see it happen over time. Like there's certain people in the
Yeah.
space that are like, everything needs to be fully decentralized. And if you're not, like, you're a fraud. It's like, that's just not realistic. I mean, there are certain things that like decentralization can certainly improve. And I think we'll see centralized entities start to incorporate decentralization in different forms.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about, from I guess from a structural standpoint, having redundancies, and there's definitely benefits, but it's not something that like I think is necessary for all things. I'll say, if that
Mhm.
answers your question.
I mean, some things don't need to be put on the blockchain, right? We say that over and over again. How many institutions, how many brands, people, artists, celebrities come into the space and try to add something, and it just doesn't work out. Like if it's not broken, why try to fix it? But I mean, do you honestly think that we are truly decentralized, or do you think this is a good way to make it seem like we are decentralized and we are being monitored even further?
It's a good question. So, are we fully decentralized? Not really. I mean, a lot of the blockchains are using AWS in the backend still. Like, let's be real.
Mm.
So, you know, no, we're not fully decentralized. A lot of the projects that I work with, there are aspects that are decentralized, and there's a lot of ways to look at this. The participation is decentralized. Using the blockchain, I think, to distribute value amongst participants and investors in a visible way and transparent way, like that aspect's decentralized. But, I think for a while there's like this obsession over DAOs. And I think there's some questions there. Like for some of these projects that I'm investing in, this is a topic we've talked about. Should you have fully decentralized decision making from day one? I would argue probably not. I
Mhm.
think you have certain leadership for a company,
Yeah.
and they have the best. They should. You should be looking at the team and making sure they have the long term view in mind. That's not always the case in crypto, but they should have the best interests of the project's success long term in mind. If you all of a sudden you have people that have stake in the project, especially when you think about crypto minded people making those decisions, most of them are going to make decisions based on, hey, push my token value up today, not really caring about the overall long term vision. So from a decentralized standpoint, as far as decision making, I don't know that you should be fully decentralized right away. Now, over time, you can transition to that, I think. But then again, as I led off with, like the backbone of these projects, I would love to see more of them go to a decentralized compute,
Mhm.
um, you know, I guess backbone, but a lot of them are still using centralized servers. So to answer your question, no, we're not fully decentralized, but I think we're seeing a push to be more and more decentralized over time, which is good, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, going back a little bit, what life experiences have shaped the way that you think about systems, power, and the way the world works today?
Oh man, what life experiences? That's a good question.
Mm.
Um, I mean, a lot of it's been just as far as like how I foresee decentralization lives. It's just reading. For me, like I guess this could I don't know if this would be considered a life experience, but I incorporate a minimum of 10 pages of reading every single day. And I'm not talking, I do a lot of reading with my research, but I'm talking about like from an actual book, you know,
Yeah.
and because I think that we should always be expanding and learning. Um, I found out, actually, I'll say this much. This is a life experience. I early in my career when I lived in New York, I got in a place where I'd gotten complacent. And I
Mhm.
realized for me that complacency is the thing that stresses me out the most. If I feel like I'm not achieving what I should be achieving and what I'm capable of. So I've incorporated things in my life now that force me to continually learn every single day and push myself forward. And one of those things is the reading. And last year, a lot of that was based around like macroeconomics and really understanding how the money system works, the history of that, how central banks interact. Because I think we realized in the first year of Trump's presidency, there's gonna be a lot of volatility. And there's going to be a lot of ways to play that. So I wanted to become an expert in that field. And now I've been able to put a lot of that to work. So I guess that's one example of a life experience that kind of pushed me towards where I'm at now that I'm utilizing today, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I like that you brought up complacency because
Mm.
a lot of us understand that, it stops our growth because it creates that illusion that where you are is good enough. And it's not, especially in this space, right? So, what keeps you going when the markets are chaotic, the narratives are loud, and the space feels uncertain? And, you're in a place where it's like, you know what, maybe I'm a little comfortable where I am. And this could go for anybody because I think that complacency, especially in this space, a lot of us become, a product of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really timely question because 2022 into 2023 was a tough year, right? I
Yeah.
I had come in like halfway through that market cycle, and then we had the fallout, the FTX debacle, everything. And I think a lot of us was faced with that decision. Like, do we continue in the space, or we just like wash our hands of it and leave, right?
Mhm.
I took that as an opportunity. Granted, I went and touched grass for a couple months because that was a tough situation.
Yeah.
But I took that as an opportunity to find the projects while the market was down and place some chips on some projects that I had high conviction in. And in 2024, a lot of those did really well. I had some that did, a 30x, I had a 15x, I had one at 350x, had some really solid returns in 2024. But then, here we are. I think a lot of us expected 2025 to be, this really great year. And there was a handful of people that got it right, but the vast majority didn't, right? And that was another really tough year. And I'm like, this again, I did take some profits, but I, frankly, round tripped a decent amount of money too. And I was just like super frustrated. And again, it was a time where I could have washed my hands of the space and be like, I'm done with this. It's scam, blah, 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 whatever. I took that as an opportunity though, to really grind again. Cause I was like, you know what? I did this once. I found the opportunities, but I need to understand market psychology better to understand when it's overheated, be better about profit taking. I want to understand the macro side of things, which, I really tasked myself with last year. And in that way, I can play the market when it's up and down. Okay. And I got to say, if you learn how to short the market, it can be kind of freeing, because if you're only long in this space, you're going to be in for a decent amount of pain. If you can play the market both ways and learn to be objective about it, then you can really take a multifaceted approach to this where, my view now, and I have to say, like, from where I was 2 years ago to today, night and day. A lot of that was some of those tough learnings. So, I look at it from, the DePIN side. Those are kind of longer term plays. I mean, not long term for crypto, I'll say.
Yeah.
And finding those value plays when there's extreme fear in the market. Okay. And those are spot DCA, positions. I'm looking for the current alpha, which is more of a short-term play, which has been like AI agents recently. And both those are, based on the market, moving up, and then looking at the macro plays and looking at ways to trade, and not just crypto, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, of course, the majors, but also looking at gold and silver, and more recently oil. And that way you can play the market up and down and really take advantage of all scenarios. So that's how I've stayed motivated, is continuing to learn from my mistakes, identify what I've done well, and then craft a strategy that, I can make money in all conditions.
You said something that really resonated with me, and that if you're not shorting the market, you could be in a very, I can't say it word for word, but a very shitty position, right? Like, if you're only longing it. The reason that it resonated is when I first started, I would say learning how to trade, which I really wasn't learning, but I remember that I signed up for a crypto platform and I was only longing. And one day I decided to short. And that day I made more profits shorting than longing. And I've lost a lot of money in this space. And I remember that I had told somebody that I had shorted, and they're like, why are you shorting? Don't you want crypto to survive? Don't you want, this space to survive, etc.? You should never be shorting. And then after that, it really, really hit me hard. And I started like just doing nothing but longs. And I got wrecked so many times. I think that's how I lost a lot of the money. And, as voices and as educators in this space, what responsibility do you feel, if any, towards the community or your community that listens to you and trusts your perspective?
Well, it's a lot. And that's really important, I think, because obviously, we have disclaimers, like what we say isn't financial advice, but I also think like there's so many people in the space that just shill stuff. And we'll see it soon when the market really rebounds. Every single person, their thumbnails can be like, these are going to 100x, and it's like, for me, I don't cover projects unless I personally have investment in them. Actually, like I've had a lot of projects reach out wanting to do like paid endorsements, etc., that I've turned down because, for me, like I'm looking at this as building up a reputation. There's no like short-term financial gain that is worth ruining that, and I've seen so many people do that in this space. So, I think it is important to be transparent and protect your brand. And I operated that way though, in the normal like Web2 space too. Like your reputation is everything. So I think it is super important to be thorough, but also be upfront and honest and transparent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I want to touch on DePIN and kind of move into that, so you can tell us like a little bit more about everything
Yeah.
that you talk about. But when you talk about decentralized infrastructure, you're really talking about reshaping who controls the backbone of the world. Do you think people fully grasp how significant that could be?
No, like not at all. I mean, maybe in our space a little bit, but like,
Yeah.
no way. I mean, the average person, and especially after what we saw in the last year, you bring up crypto and they're like scam. Like a lot of people don't understand. And it's kind of crazy. Like we got to this point now where you see all these hacks, right, of these centralized databases. And I think people
Mhm.
now are just accepting it. They're like, yeah, my credit card got leaked again. It's like, it's crazy how numb people have gotten to it. But I think, as we see AI become more of a cornerstone of our lives, and you realize how much of your data is out there and has been scraped by these, AI models, and as you use these LLMs, that data is being fed into these models. I think people are going to be a little bit more careful and knowledgeable about their data being out there, because there's going to be a lot of new ways people can use that data. And I think decentralization should help at least a little bit in protecting people's privacy.
Yeah. Do you see DePIN as a technological evolution or as part of a broader shift in how power and ownership are distributed globally?
I think both. I think we're going to see this model really play out. There's some of the projects we'll talk about, they couldn't have done it without the DePIN model, and I
Mhm.
think that says a lot. And we're kind of already have seen some centralized entities do something similar to DePIN, right? Where
Yeah.
they, like Uber did this, where they were having drivers like collect pictures and collect data points for them, as kind of like a side quest. Little do they know, like they're collecting that data to replace themselves, because Uber wants that data to train autonomous vehicles. So they were kind of doing this in a way like, hey, we'll pay you $5 per task to do this. And that's kind of a decentralized, like crowdsource approach from a centralized entity without the best intentions, of course. So I think we've seen some of this, and some of the examples I'll show here in a minute. I think you'll see like centralized entities are going to start incorporating this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see like a merging of DePIN, and DePIN's become a pretty wide net, if you will. I think we're going to see
Mhm.
like subsections come off of it too. But yeah, I think it is going to be pretty revolutionary if it's the right project, of course, with the right leadership and disrupting the right markets.
So literally, we've been training AI to take over our jobs, take over the world, and take over us as humans then. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, yeah, and robots are coming soon too. I mean, like, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but we
Mhm.
already are starting to see mass layoffs. In certain sectors are being hit harder than others, but a lot of white collar jobs, knowledge jobs, are being replaced, especially in like the finance and sector. So, um, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, they're training these AI models. Was it Jack Dorsey just laid off like 10,000 people? I think it was.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was like, look, we're early, but all these other companies are gonna be doing this soon. Like AI is allowing, say, one person to do 10 people's jobs. People are just gonna be a lot more efficient. So I think for people out there, you better start learning how to use AI tools, okay? Because you're gonna have to become
Mhm.
more efficient at your job. Today it doesn't necessarily replace you, but if you're not using AI, you're really putting yourself in a bad spot, because someone else is going to, and they're going to end up taking your job if you're not learning how to use these tools. Is my view on it.
Do you think some people can still execute certain things a lot better than AI? And what I mean by that is like right now, there are so many tools and resources that are created, especially for us content creators, right?
Mm.
So we need a graphic. We now can punch it in with our image, ask it specifically what we want. And some of them are great. They're spitting that out. Now with videos too, it's like, you upload a picture, give it a prompt, it spits the video, you pause it at the end of the video, you clip that as an image, and then you re-upload it, and then you give it another prompt, and then now you created a trailer. And a lot of people, when we're putting this information out, some of them come back and they're like, is this AI? It's like we still can have a human create that and still have the human element. But right now, time is money, and AI seems that the more that we're feeding it, the more it's learning and the more it's creating what we really want to create. So do you think that some people are still going to want that human element, especially if the humans can take anywhere from 5 hours to create a video, 24 hours versus we can create that probably in less than 30 minutes?
Yes. So there are certain things that AI can do a really good job of. There's certain things that it can't. I think the human element is going to be the differentiator here pretty
Mhm.
soon, right? Like having the ability to have that human connection and understand how to connect with people. Like AI can't do that, right? Like you can use it as a tool to be more efficient. You can use it for creative purposes. If you're the example you gave, like creating videos rather. But I still think that human element certainly is going to be a differentiator, and I think um, looking forward, yeah, I think people are going to want to have that human element. That's still something that's going to be desired. So I'm not saying it's going to like just replace everything, but I think where it can make you more efficient certainly is something you should be leaning on or trying to.
Oh, absolutely. Because if we don't learn how to humanize the space, we are going to not be able to even tell the difference between what is the human, what is AI. For all people know, you and I could just be AIs talking right now, making it seem like we're humans.
It's kind of crazy. I don't know if you saw like Matthew McConaughey was talking about that.
Yes.
He's like, you have to like trademark your voice and your likeness and this stuff because I think we will have. I mean, there's already AI music artists that are in the Billboard 100, which is
That is
wild.
crazy.
We're gonna have movie stars that are like an AI movie star. We're gonna have interesting times for sure, but I still think that there's still like a human element that can resonate with people that can still set you apart for sure.
I mean, I don't know if you've already seen, and this goes back a few years when I first learned about it, and now they're getting better and better. Where on live stream, I think there's something that you can plug in this application or something like if you don't want to dox yourself and if you don't want to show your face, now you can use a character, your PFP, another phase. And it's like you and I interacting right now. And some of them you can't tell the difference. Some of them you can, especially like, if it's a cartoon. But if you're using a human and you're using something else, you can't even tell. I mean, that's wild.
It is. I've seen some like these dudes that are like creating like OnlyFans accounts with like fake chicks. I'm like, oh man,
Oh my
that's
goodness.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people in crypto. A lot of people don't dox themselves, and from one, okay, if you're a founder of like a project, I think that's a huge red flag. Okay.
Mhm.
I can get why certain people, especially if you're in France, because I don't know if you saw what's happening in France in the last couple of years, like people getting
Oh,
kidnapped
yeah.
left and right. So I can understand from a certain perspective, like why you wouldn't want to like dox yourself. But I don't know. I think, if you are a creator, if you are a project founder, especially, I think people appreciate being able to connect with like a real person,
I
so
Yeah, I think that, a few years ago, that was a norm, right? If you weren't docs, that was a norm. You entered into business transaction with these people and you understood it. Now it's not the norm anymore. Now, if you're not doxxed, if you don't want to reveal yourself, you're like, okay, we're not going to do business because of all the times that we have been scammed in the space. You're like, you know what? It was so easy to scam people when you were not doxxed. Now it's like, oh, heck no. But question for you, like, what excites you the most about where DePIN could be 5 or 10 years from now?
Oh man. What excites me the most is like so all these projects are on the cutting edge of a lot of these sectors. We talked about AI, and I think there's a lot of ways there's intersection there between AI agents, powering AI, the
Mhm.
data that's fed into the models. You look at robotics. I think a lot of these projects in 5 or 10 years, we could be at the very big, the forefront of something really big. So for one, I think there's a lot of money to be made on one end. So that's super exciting, obviously. But I think being able to at this point like connect with a lot of these founders that I think we're early here. And it's gonna be really fun over the next few years to watch some of these projects really grow and start getting a lot of attention. And for me, like I think learning about all these different verticals, because I
Yeah.
mean, when you're interviewing someone, especially like a project founder, for me, like I do a tremendous amount of research because I want to know what I'm talking about. If I'm asking them questions, I want to
Yes.
be an expert in their project. So, I get to learn about all these different, sectors in the economy and all the upcoming tech stuff that's happening. That's super exciting. So I think, all the research and all the work I've been doing, and I think over the coming years, seeing that really blossom is going to be pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that we aren't aware or we don't talk about it that much, but there are tons of projects that are building in this space. And it's crazy that once you start doing the research, you're like, okay, where are they? I've been in spaces and where people say, it's like it's all about the meme coins, dumping and all that stuff. And they're like, well, where are the projects that are building? The problem is that we're not showcasing those projects enough. We're not doing our research and we're not taking time to really educate ourselves as to what is out there that people are building because it's crazy. So, on the flip side of this, what concerns you about where things could go if the industry loses its way? Will we lose our way?
Um, I think, you can make the argument that we've lost already a little bit this market cycle.
Really?
I mean, I
Oh,
think
yeah, I can
so.
see it. I can see it. Yes.
I mean, look, I think going into 2025, we were like, oh, this is gonna be so good for crypto, and then we saw the president launch a meme coin right, around inauguration. It's like, man, really? And then the second one, Melania coin, it's like that extracts a lot of value. We saw Pump.fund come out, and I think that extracted a lot of value
Mhm.
from the real builders, and like props to them, whatever. They created a platform that a lot of people were using. It brought a lot of people into crypto, I think, for maybe the wrong reasons. And everyone was focused on this casino. And so I think in a way, the true builders have been here and they've been building. I think it's been very frustrating for them. So, but I think you could make the argument that like overall, the sector's kind of lost its way, because I think the non-crypto people, if you ask them about it, it's become
Mhm.
very polarized now because of the politics involved today. And, so many people have gotten rug pulled, left and right, that I think most people now are looking at it as like, whereas a few years ago, they're super excited about the technology. Now it's like the amount of people that they're looking at it as a scam is crazy to me. So I
Mhm.
think from an optics standpoint, maybe we've lost our way a little bit. But I think if you're really looking at the sectors that are building, we're moving in the right direction, and the fundamentals are stronger on these projects than they've ever been. A lot of revenue being generated from Web2 customers, like money outside of our ecosystem, and that's really fantastic to see. But I hope that we get the regulatory stuff cleared up. Like it was great to see the Genius Act passed. I want to see the Clarity Act get passed, though, and if we see that done, then I think we're going to get a lot of tailwinds, not just now, but in the years to come, and that's really going to allow this space to grow the way that it should. So I think we can certainly get back on track.
Um, okay, so can we touch a little bit about the politics and stuff? Because at one point, it's like we were very excited and we're like, okay, if the politicians, come into the space and adapt crypto, then, it can help propel this space even further, etc. And then now that we see them here, it's like, damn, they be rugging us left and right, and Trump was a prime example about that, then Melania, and then it continued with other world politicians. And then now it's like we're seeing crypto, and every other day it's like we don't know. It's uncertain because whether we want to say it, there is uncertainty around Bitcoin and some of these, tokens that are up and down. And I always think that because big institutions are here, politicians, it's like now they are able to market manipulate the crypto market space, where a few years ago, you couldn't even do a TA analysis on crypto charts because we didn't know which way it was going to go because, your regular crypto people controlled that. So it was very hard. Now you're able to do TA on it because why? Institutions are here, politicians, and they're the ones that are literally market manipulating crypto. That's what I think.
Yeah, like I think you can make the argument that we let like the wolf into the hen house a little bit with the government. It certainly didn't play out how we had hoped last year. Yeah, the meme coin stuff, and then the Argentina meme coin on top of like Trump's, it's like not a good look. The market manipulation certainly has been going on for some time. I mean, October 10th, I think, was a much bigger deal than a lot of people realized, especially at the time. And I put out a video shortly after, like within a couple of weeks, identifying what had happened, right? And of course, if you remember, it was that Friday. Trump tends to, and this is what sucks for crypto under his presidency, is like he tends to wait until normally Friday markets close before he gives out bad news, because that gives, well, it makes sense because for the traditional stock market, then they have the full weekend to kind of like ease everyone. You send Scott Besson out there to be like, well, this is actually what we meant, before the markets open on Monday. Well, crypto trades 24/7. So when he does that, we get freaking hammered. And that's kind of what happened, right? He threatened tariffs on China again on that Friday, and that started the sell-off. And then Binance had an internal pricing issue where they, most exchanges will, yes, rely on their own order books, but they also source pricing from other exchanges.
Yeah.
They weren't doing that. And they put out a freaking notice about this. I think it was like October, and it was a few days before October 10th, letting people know like, oh, hey, we have this internal pricing issue. We're going to fix it in a week. Like leaving this potential exploit out there. And someone exploited it. It was the stable coin on Athena, so USDE, effectively depegged. So you had all these people are trading on leverage using this stable coin as their, equity to back their trade. All of a sudden dropped from $1, which is supposed to be pegged at, to 70 cents on Binance only, and all these people got freaking liquidated. I think they called it ADL. And even Wintermute's CEO came out and said this. He's like, oh yeah, we got liquidated at price points that didn't make any sense. That, caused contagion. And then you saw the liquidations cascade all over crypto. And it caused one of the largest, 9 times worse than we saw in FTX. Okay. The washout was massive. And I think we've been dealing with that now for months, and even like, Kathy Woods come out and talked about this. Tom Lee's talked about this. Raoul Powell's talked about this, like this Binance situation. So it's taken a long time. A lot of market makers got hammered from this. And I think we've since seen a lot of manipulation where, for a while there in December, it was like the price would push up to liquidate the shorts and then back down to liquidate the longs. And it was like happening every day. And it was really a racket. And I think, at least my hope, is that as we get more centralized exchanges like in the US, and we get clarity past I hope that it cuts down on a lot of that manipulation, because there's certainly a lot that's been taking place, and it is like so obvious like that it was happening. So that's one of my hopes, is with the regulatory environment really giving us some clarity with this market structure bill, that we can cut down on some of that manipulation, because that's a big problem for us. If you want to attract people from traditional finance over to crypto, and they see like October 10th, a pricing glitch on an exchange can cause, $19 billion wipeout. Like, why wouldn't they just continue investing in the stock market, where they've had great returns? Like, if we want to attract people over, we got to clean that stuff up. And I really hope that we get there. And I think it will happen. But we got to get this bill passed, in my opinion.
Okay, so I'm understanding then you're bullish on the Clarity Act, right? And I do understand there's mixed sentiments about it, because some people may argue it could harm decentralization depending on how it's implemented. And, in reading about this and trying to understand it a little bit more, critics may say, critics on the internet, because everybody's a critic about everything, it brings crypto into a deeper government regulation. Now, it also forces registration and compliance on platforms. So can we really say that we're in this space because of decentralization? But now with bills like this being passed, it gives regulators power to decide what counts as decentralized and what categories this act is going to create, such as what is a digital commodity, investment contract assets, stable coins, etc. So in a way, I mean, I know I've asked this question to different people, and some of them are like, no, we're not going into CBDCs. But in a way, doesn't it seem like we're kind of moving into something similar? And so
we got to be careful. I mean,
yeah.
Look, the Genius Act, everyone's like, no, it's stable coins, it's not a CBDC, but it's like, it kind of looks a little bit like it's going to be a CBDC. It's like, anytime the government's involved, you have to kind of question their motives a little bit, So as far as like, am I bullish on it getting passed? I mean, I'm looking at Polymarket right now. It's like 59% chance of passing this year. So it's still very much up in the air. Now, should it be passed? I think it depends on the language, because they're trying to change it. On one end, you have the banks right now that are fighting the stablecoin issuers, because they don't want competition. The banks are arguing that we have way more oversight than the stablecoin issuers. If they want to be able to offer yield, they should become a bank. And it's like, okay. I mean, I guess I can get that side of the argument, but then we have our banks that are being super greedy, that when you put money in your bank account, they're getting, they're buying treasuries, getting like 5% yield and giving you like next to nothing and collecting the spread. These stablecoin issuers want to be able to offer yield, and frankly, the stablecoin issuers have to hold treasuries, 1-to-1 to back all the stablecoins on chain. Our banks use fractionalized banking and don't have the backing. I mean, they have other regulation they have to, abide by, but they actually have less backing for the dollars that are out there than stablecoin issuers do. They have FDIC insurance up to $250K per bank through the federal government, but it's like, I don't know. I hope they can meet somewhere in between there. But the surveillance thing is a little bit concerning. I don't know if you saw these tax forms that are coming out that want you to like fill out every single exchange you've ever had, assets on. And then if you sign, if you sign and then they say that you lied about something or missed something, like, it could be perjury. It's like, what the heck is that? Like, what kind of surveillance is that? Like, I'm not trying to deal with that. What is the
purpose? I mean, that is crazy. I mean, they don't even do that for regular taxes work. Now they're doing it for crypto. What is the purpose? Look, this is what I always said, and this is a theory. So if whoever's watching, I mean, whatever. But I do believe that Bitcoin was a Trojan horse, and that it was created by the government. Multiple entities to tested to, because eventually I do think that we are going to be moving into a one world digital asset. And, it's like testing the system and seeing how it works, how it functions. And then when I was doing research,
Oop. I think you might have rugged, or did I rug? Uh-oh.
can you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh,
I can hear you
where
again now. I
go?
couldn't for a second.
Look, do you see what happened? They don't want me to talk about this. Am I still here?
It was right when you started talking about that. Oh no, that's
Because
a little
okay,
weird.
no, I found a lot of research. Look, okay, I'm gonna say it quick before
Before they freeze
it
you
boots
again.
me again, and then yeah. But it's like when I was doing research, it's like the CIA 1990s late, it's how to make a mint or something like that. And then when I was doing research, on the Titanic for a conspiracy that Tammy and I were doing, and how we think that they offed some of the biggest millionaires at that time, the richest people, and then they took over, they created the Fed. And then when I was doing research, I found out that apparently there was a document that was created late 1990s by the Fed that talked about CBDCs. It didn't exactly say CBDCs, but it described it to the T of what we're going through right now. And then they parked it. And then here we are, fast forward. Now we're having regulations, these acts that are trying to pass to control it. I mean, we're always going to be controlled by the government or higher powers, etc. But we can move past that so we don't get the black vans driving up to you, because they're not going to drive up to me. I've been asking for them to come and they
It was
never
like
do.
almost about to knock on my door. Yeah, I have read though that it wouldn't shock me. I will say it wouldn't shock me, but I think this forum right now is about them, trying to, because you got to think about this. They're gonna have AI agents that are gonna be able to look at everything on chain, and they're gonna be able to go back in history and see every transaction ever done. I think they want to get a starting point for all of the stuff you've done on chain. The more data points they have there, the more they can plug into these agents. They can figure out the full snapshot of all of your crypto activity. And I think they're going to try to find people that have been skirting taxes. So I anything, I try to overpay because let's be real. If you're in the trenches on this stuff and you're like trading meme coins and you're swapping here on this DEX and over here, it's like, the tax software is good, but there's sometimes where like there's missing original tax bases and you're having to like figure out, oh, at what time, of that day was the price. And it's like, you're doing your very best to fill all this stuff out, but it can be really difficult to get, complete information on some of this stuff, especially if you're very active. But I think that's what they're trying to do now. As far as like the origination of Bitcoin, we could have a whole episode on that. But then again, I don't know if we might go missing. So maybe
Oh
not.
my God. You know what? I do a conspiracy theory show. I'm going to bring it back. I haven't done it, but we wanted to pick up on Bitcoin. I am going to reach out to you so you can come on with us, because it gets crazy tinfoil, but we need to bring it back, and it's going to be all about Bitcoin.
All right. Well, I'm going to use one of those AI things we were talking about earlier where I show somebody different, because I'm not trying to
I
talk
think
about
we
stuff.
all should, right? Yes. I'll be wearing a wig and shades so nobody knows. But okay, I do want to talk about macro and world perspective. It's just a couple of questions on that. But
Sure.
I know that you talk a lot about macro events, oil, inflation, geopolitics. How do these global forces shape the way that you view crypto and the future of decentralized networks?
I mean, it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
I look at the macro side of things to more so understand what's happening in the markets now. And I'm reading, like right now, a book I'm reading is How Countries Go Broke by Ray Dalio. He talks about the debt cycles. So that's something that's looking like maybe more longer term, and how the whole world order is going to shift. But like for me, it's more so for like trading, is why I'm looking at the macro stuff. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you remember when gold had that big run up earlier this year. Remember when gold and silver were going nuts?
Oh yeah.
It's right. It was right when like Trump was pulling his like Greenland shenanigans and was threatening tariffs on Europe again. I think everyone's just like, screw the dollar. You know, we saw DXY drop and we saw gold and silver going parabolic. But it got to the point where I was like, this is getting a little bit ridiculous. You know, this is a $36 trillion asset that's adding more than the market cap of crypto over a 20-minute period. And people are like standing in line to buy gold bars. Like, if that's not a top signal, like, I don't know what is, you know? So I was thinking, like, what's the event that's going to lead to like the sell-off? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a lot of research on the next Fed chair because, you know, that's one thing. I was like, this is going to really have an impact on markets, who Trump chooses. So I'd researched all the top candidates. One in particular was Kevin Warsh, where, you know, doing my research, I couldn't wrap my head around why Trump would choose him, because he's kind of looked at it as a hawk, like, you know, and it's a midterm year. And I'm like, Trump wants to juice markets. Why would he choose Kevin Warsh? He wants to strengthen the dollar. He wants to cut back on spending. He's not a huge proponent on, you know, QE and flooding the market with capital. And there's rumors that he was going to be the next Fed chair. On that Thursday night, I remember it distinctly. I was like, hey, this is our event that's about to cause the sell-off in gold, because it's going to restore confidence in the US dollar if we rein in spending, et cetera. Sure enough, you know, seeing that rumor and the news hit there was what caused that huge drop off and allowed me to short the market. You know, so being able to really look at those macro events and then tie them into the market, it allows you to enter trades. You know, one other one, I'll give you an example, is another gold trade. And it was when it was like maybe 3 or 4 Fridays ago, there was a report that came out on a Friday morning that Russia was rumored to start using US dollars for energy trade again.
Wow.
And that was a big deal, because if you look at what's going on with BRICS, they've been de-dollarizing. Like, Russia and China have been using their own currencies for some time to trade oil. They've been trying to get away from the US dollar. Them moving, this rumor of them moving back into the US dollar, I was like, this is going to move markets for sure. You know, and strengthen the dollar, you know, so DXY up, you know, gold, silver down. So that's another example of like where I was able to short gold and silver based on macro news. And, you know, X is the place, like that's where the news breaks first. So you can find some really legit accounts that break news, and they tend to break news correctly and be first. You can enter these trades and really get ahead of the markets. And then prediction markets too. Like, I cannot emphasize how important they are. If you're not using prediction markets, you are missing out, because you can see how much is baked in. Like, you know, you've seen these times where like a big event happens. You're like, well, why come the market didn't like explode? And you're like, the buy the rumor, sell the news event.
Yeah.
Prediction markets, you can see how much is baked in. So we were talking about the Clarity Act, 59% chance, right? So if it happens, there's certainly still, you know, 41%. Is that the right math? Yeah, 41% upside in the markets. But you have to recognize the fact that 59% of that upside is already baked into the market. On the flip side, if it doesn't happen, that's a lot of downside, right? That's 59% of downside that the market was expecting to be to be baked in to happen. That we would likely see a pretty large sell-off in crypto if it doesn't happen. So really leveraging that stuff. You know, I was able to enter trades before the Iran war. On Friday, the day before we went into Iran, I was looking at prediction markets. I covered this in my live stream, and I was like, hey, look at the chances of us moving to Iran are surging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was able to get into some energy trades, into some investments before it happened based on prediction markets, you know, so that's a really good way to to leverage those.
Yes. So you talked about one world order. Do you think eventually we are going to be moving into a one world digital order? And do you, two-part question, and then do you think that eventually the US dollar will be eliminated? I mean, at this point, of course, you know, it's still extremely dominant, but we already see the gradual diversification, because you talked about how other nations, you know, BRICS, and they're exploring those trade in their local currencies or whatnot. But you know, with I think I'm going to say me theory, you know, it's like we try to connect the end of the dollar to CBDCs, stable coins, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or whatnot. And then, you know, all of the things that are being filed with the Fed and how these crypto exchanges and platforms are filing for these VIP accesses and things like that. I mean, can we say that the writing is on the wall eventually?
Okay, so this is a really good question. So I think the stablecoin bill and this regulation could actually extend the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. So to answer your original question, like, will the U.S. dollar always be the global reserve currency? Maybe, but we've got to make some serious changes. I think eventually someone's going to go back to, you know, hard money, being backed by something real again. Because you have to think, you know, a quick history lesson here. Like the U.S. dollar became the global reserve currency coming out of Bretton Woods. The U.S. had like, you know, 80% of the world's gold, and that's basically how we became the global reserve currencies, because we agreed that everybody could trade in their dollars for gold. So it was backed 1-for-1 at $35 an ounce up until 1971. And that's when the Nixon shock happened. We ended that gold standard. Basically, we had printed more than the gold we had, and you know, France and other countries started calling us on our bluff. So to protect the dollar, we ended that, and we got kind of bailed out because of the petrodollar. So all of global trade had to be done in U.S. dollars. So that really forced everyone to use U.S. dollars again, and kind of saved us as the global reserve currency. But since 1971, we've had to have no backing. Like, we don't have to have gold backing the dollar. It's the government and really our military. But it's enabled us to just print and create credit and run up this national debt. And now we're getting to a point where it's a huge problem. So we've got to do something to rein that in. And I think there's a chance that, you know, I don't think it's going to be another fiat currency, but there's a chance that somebody does start to back their currency with gold again. And this is something we're seeing. One of the reasons why gold's been going up so much is because a lot of these central banks around the world are, like China especially, is buying a lot of gold. The US is doing it too. And there's a rumor right now that, you know, the BRICS countries are forming something called the unit, which is a basket of all their currencies. And it's like 30 or 40% backed by gold. And then their currencies, and it's all going to be on blockchain. So I think someone's going to make that move, and that could be the next currency that becomes the global reserve currency. Interestingly enough, you know, back in 1944, I think, when Bretton Woods happened, John Maynard Keynes was representing the UK. He wanted to create a new global currency, and that was his goal. The US ended up winning out the US dollar due to a guy named Harry Dexter White. But that we were close to having an actual global reserve currency and not being the US dollar. We've got to be really careful, though. And going back to my second point, which is that I think the stable coin, the crypto bills, can extend the life of the US dollar, or help to. That's because stablecoin issuers have to buy up treasury bills to back the US dollar. So they buy up our debt. And the US is in a situation right now where we have to refinance roughly like $9 trillion of our debt. And we're doing it mostly on T-bills, which are a year duration or shorter, mainly because interest rates are so high. They don't want to refinance everything on long-term debt and be stuck with those interest payments. So we need buyers of that debt. That's a big reason, I think, why they're pushing so hard on this Clarity Act. The stablecoin bill certainly helps. But if the Clarity Act gets passed, that's a lot more stablecoins that are going to be created. That means a lot more buying of our debt and financing our debt. So between that and some of the banking deregulation they're going to do this year, I think that's a big part of what they're trying to do, and why crypto is such an important piece to, you know, their plan right now, and keeping the dollar as the global reserve currency and continuing to finance our debt.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we are at the top of the hour. Typically, I put up the chat. Do you want to see the chat on the screen? It's your show, so it's however you feel comfortable.
Well, can I run through like a few projects real quick, just DePIN projects I'm invested in,
absolutely.
if that's cool? Because for
Yes.
people that are watching, I would love to run through some of these. I can be pretty quick because I know we are at
No,
the
you
top
go ahead.
hour. Okay. So the things I'm really focused on right now, robotics, AI, obviously, whether that's powering AI, whether that is, you know, the data that's feeding these AI models. So this first one is Aoki, and this is building out the perception layer for robots. So if you think about the robotics landscape right now, it's really US versus China. Same with AI. China is manufacturing a lot of robots that are open source, where you can basically plug in your software to make them do useful things. So when you get it out of the box, it's not going to be able to do anything really useful. You have to be able to program it. So this is what they're working on, is that programming layer, and they're working with, you know, they have multiple 7-figure contracts with grocery stores, retail locations, where they're building out, basically they call it the real world web, but it's like the digital map of the location, so that between smart glasses, robots, and your smartphone, let's say you're an employee going into work in the morning, there'll be a robot that goes around the store all night collecting imagery. And then you'll walk in, you'll have your task, your glasses will lead you to where you need to stock the shelves and do your job. And they've got 2 Fortune 500 companies as well that they're working with. Oh yeah, perfect. It's already moving over. So this is them mapping the area here. And then on the other side here, you can see this is the digital rendering that's been created. And then they have a full product that their employees are a lot more efficient, you know, working with. And this is one, if you want to learn more about it, I just posted this interview with their founder and CEO, Nils. So they're based out of Hong Kong, and they're doing some really cool stuff. Currently sitting at like $38 million market cap, and they haven't had their big moment yet. None of these projects have really had their big moment, and I think they're all really positioned to do well when things recover. GeoNet's another one. So Aoki like maps the inside of locations. GeoNet's mapping the outside world. So, you know, if you think about when you use GPS, you connect to satellites, you can only get within a couple meters of accuracy. By putting down a base station that works with the satellites, you can get centimeter level accuracy. And GeoNet has these things positioned. They use token incentives to get people to set up these. These are all base stations, by the way, all over the world, to create this network that you can connect to and get really precise location data. They're working with farmers on self-driving, like farm equipment. Think about self-driving vehicles, robots, drones. They're getting a ton of usage. They're up over like $9 million ARR. And this is one that they're moving into the drone space as well. And currently like a $50 million market cap. So this is a really promising project as well. So both of those, like, you know, kind of like mapping out the world. Next one's Ex Machina. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask you a quick question on the one that you just showed? Okay, so that one, all those little green dots and stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to ask you questions like, I know nothing.
Okay.
Is this satellite, or can you explain to me like how those little green dots are even being put on the map?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So you can get a base station through them. So it's something that you'd install on your rooftop. Okay, so it connects to your internet. It gets mounted on your roof. I can actually probably, if we go to geonet.com, let's see products. You can probably see here. So that's one. Let me see go here. So that's what it kind of looks like right here. So you'd install this thing on your roof, and that works with the satellites. So if someone wants to use their network, that's every one of those little dots up there. People have installed those.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's, if we go back, so yeah, again, that's what it looks like. And then you earn tokens, right? In their project, ownership of their projects by setting those up. And then people are using these. So you see, this is where they have coverage, is the other view of it. But anyone can tap into that network that's been built out all over the world and get within centimeter level accuracy. So if you're thinking about like a self-driving vehicle, GPS isn't going to cut it, right? You can't be within 2 meters of accuracy. You're going to hit other cars. You can get within a centimeter level of accuracy. That's what you really need. Like farming equipment, drones, surveys for construction workers, like all those things, you have to be really precise. You can go anywhere in these regions and you can get that type of accuracy. And their biggest markets are Europe. India is a huge growing market for them. Brazil is another one that they're really tapping into. And of course, US and Europe are their 2 largest markets. They're working with the US Department of Agriculture as well. And they've got a lot of customers. So they've been crushing it. Yeah, GeoNet's a really good project. I've interviewed their founder as well. I meant to pull that up. That's on my channel. I've interviewed him twice. So for anyone that wants to learn more about that, I have interviewed Mike, and they just moved to Solana. So this is the Geo token here. Do you have other questions? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, cut me off. If you have any questions, just let me know. So GeoNet, I would say, is mapping like the outside world. Aoki's mapping the inside world. Because you think about it, these robots, these machines, they don't perceive the world like we do. They need a map. So we've got to create like a digital twin or some way to guide them within the real world, because they can't see and comprehend it the way we do. Ex Machina is an interesting one because, I talked about in China, they're manufacturing robots that you can plug software into. So those are 2 solutions that kind of leverage that. The US and Europe are taking a very different approach where, we have a handful of robotics manufacturers. Tesla is building their Optimus. We have Figure, Apptronic. In Europe, you have 1X and Neura. They're basically creating closed source. So they're manufacturing robots, but also the software stack and everything. So when they ship it to your house, out of the box, it can do things. And to invest in these is really difficult. Like, you have to be what's called an accredited investor, because they're all private still. They're not public aside from Tesla. And to become an accredited investor, you have to have certain income level or certain net worth, and then have the connections to get into these investment circles. Ex Machina is creating a DAO for anyone to invest in these robotics companies, these private companies. And you can see here, some of the companies they invested in, some of the most well-known robotics companies out there. So far, they have 6.5 million invested, but you can see, like, for this one example, 1X, they put in 800,000, and their holdings are worth 1.7 million. Wow. You're seeing the same thing with Apptronic. For their $450,000 investments worth 911,000. You're seeing a lot of money go into these early private investment rounds. So you can own, they're basically crowdsourced investment so that anyone can access, and you can get exposure to these types of investments instead of having to be an accredited investor. So that's a really cool one. And they haven't launched their token yet, but it's going to be the Deus token. It's coming pretty soon here. Let's see here. Akash Network. Do you have any questions about that one before I move on?
No, I think that one's a little bit more self-explanatory. Well, the other one too, but it's just curiosity.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of rifling through. I just want to respect your time. So Akash Network is a decentralized compute project. So, you think about AI, right? And the power behind AI, which, if you've heard of NVIDIA, they design the chips that go into the GPUs. And you have these large AI data centers. That's where a lot of investment's going to power. Like, when you use ChatGPT, you're basically, interacting with one of these data centers in the LLM to be able to interact with that model. It requires a lot of power and a lot of compute power, but also electricity. Actually, every 100-word email that you generate through ChatGPT uses, like, I think 12 light bulbs for an hour, equivalent of electricity. And here's the big problem for the US. Our grid has not really expanded. This is us versus China. And this is a big freaking problem for the US. China has been expanding their electric grid like crazy. And there's a big concern right now in the US that all these AI data centers that are being built out won't be able to be turned on. And that's obviously going to be a huge issue for us in this battle against China for, to win out the AI race. And one of the solutions is tapping into compute that's already out there. So that's what Akash is doing. Let's say that you are a business, you have a data center and you're not using your, compute all the time. Or let's say you're even like an individual and you're a gamer, you have a high-end computer. You're obviously not using it all the time. Through Akash, you can rent out your compute resources through the internet to people. So they're kind of like the Uber or Lyft for compute. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so they're kind of like, they're like Uber Lyft for compute resources. So in one sense, that's going to be a big problem solver for this power issue because that's compute that's already there. And in August, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent even talked about this. He said, we're exploring decentralized computing and blockchain technology. So the government knows that this is going to be a solution. In fact, the founder of Akash testified in front of Congress about this like 6 months ago. So I think there's a huge opportunity here because of the power issue. And the other aspect of this is that they are doing these hackathons, and a lot of these people are powering their AI agents with their network, with Akash. So this is another network that I think could do really well. They just moved to Solana, and they just revamped their tokenomics to add a lot of utility. It's up 42% in the last month. But still, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I interviewed their founder a couple weeks ago. I'm editing that right now. I should have it posted here pretty soon. So that's kind of like powering the AI. We talked about the robotics. And then the last couple here are the data that's going into the AI models. So that's going to be a big topic looking forward because most of these LLMs have scraped the internet for most of the public data that's out there. And, now they're running into this issue where they need more data. And like there's a couple options. They're talking about creating fake data, like synthetic data to train the models, or they can tap into privatized data sets. And one thing in particular I'm looking at is collecting real world data, whether it be like traffic data, pricing data, things that, can feed these models. Because you think about like the finance industry, we were talking about this earlier, how jobs are getting replaced. These quant traders and hedge funds are using AI models for their financial, thesis. How do you get an edge, in the future? It's going to be who has the best model, and who has the best model is me, the person with the best data set. So if you can start to collect this type of data, I think there's going to be a huge market for it. And that's what 375 AI is doing. They've got a unique partnership with the largest billboard company in the country, and they have 50,000 billboards. They're setting up 6 cameras on the billboards with NVIDIA chips at the edge to collect.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? So they're collecting traffic data. They're next to ports. They can see how many trucks are coming in and out of ports. So you think about this, right? If you know how many trucks are coming out of the ports, you can see how much traffic is going to different retail locations. You can start plugging that into your algorithm and understand what's happening in the economy, if it's slowing down or speeding up ahead of the government reports. And they can plug that into their financial algorithms and get insight into the economy. Other potential customers, autonomous vehicles, understanding traffic patterns, freight and logistics, quant traders, advertising companies. And their CEO, by the way, has started several companies. One that he sold for $380 million selling data. So he's doing the same thing here with this company. So he's got a proven track record. I actually interviewed their CEO as well. So highly encourage you guys to check that out because this is actually my largest investment right now out of altcoins. It's only a $4.6 million market cap. And they're looking to drive in the hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. To me, like this is, by the way, this price point right here, their original investors, they just launched their token right after October 10th, at the end of October. That's why their price is down so much. Their original investors invested $10 million at 5.5 cents. It's
That is
currently,
crazy.
yeah, it's like 65% below their early investors. And it's because people just aren't aware of it, but they're about to absolutely crush it. They even have a beta or a beta launch going right now with Target. So if you download their app, you can go in. They're working with Target and Kind Bars, and they're running this test right now where you can go in and take pictures of product on the shelves and get paid their tokens. So they're collecting pricing data through their app and some really cool stuff they're working on. So to me, this is like one of the biggest hidden gems out there because I think the upside from where we're at is just freaking crazy. So I'm super excited
Okay,
about that.
where do
Go ahead.
you find projects like this? This is so interesting and fascinating, especially this one because I mean, we already feel like we're being monitored, by the government, but now you could be monitored and get tokens. It's like we're being monitored for free, but now you can be monitored and, get rewards. Like, where do you find these type of gems?
So it started out. I built out my DePIN businesses, based on the deployment model I was talking about earlier, and then from there, kind of it turns into like a networking thing because I have a lot of
Mhm,
founders that reach out to me because they want to be interviewed, and then I'll do interviews. Or I'll do research on the project. I decide who I bring on. Like I really only bring on projects that I'm planning on investing in myself. I turn down a lot because I don't want to represent projects that I think aren't going to make it. I don't want to represent that. So a lot of it is research, then the networking. At first I was, putting out videos to kind of build up my reputation. Then I could reach out to them and ask for an interview. Now they're basically, in most cases, reaching out to me for interviews. So that's how I come across a lot of them. And just knowing other people in the space, they're like, hey, you should check this out. And I'd say like, for every 15 projects I check out, I see one that I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then, for me, this is like, given the market they're moving into, the revenue they're going to produce, the team behind it, and the market cap.
mhm.
This is probably probably my highest conviction play since like 2023. I don't think that full mix of everything really comes together that often, especially the market cap. Like in a bull market, you would never see this market cap that low. This is something you see in bear markets. And that's like, those are the things that I'm looking for, is like that mix of everything. Not to mention their investor and employee unlocks don't start till October, and it's a 3-year vest. So you don't have to worry about like a ton of dilution for quite a long time. So those are like the things, if you want to, like, those are the things I was looking for last market cycle, where I was able to get 50, 100, the one I was talking about earlier, like 300x, is finding like that perfect combination. That's the recipe I look for. Another one is Silencio. And this is a really interesting one. They pivoted, but they're collecting voice data to train AI models. And they actually pay you. So you can go on their platform. You can get paid up to $20 an hour for giving voice data. So they have campaigns on here, and you put in what languages you speak, what your dialects are, and they'll match you up with campaigns. And there's a huge market for this right now. So they're actually earning already in revenue. They're generating millions per month, and they're growing. Like the expansion they're seeing is nuts. I highly encourage you guys to check this out. I had their founders on for a space. Definitely worth a listen. It's really fascinating what they're doing, but more importantly, their market cap's only 1.4 million. So it's like they're generating more than that in a month, and their market cap is only 1.4 million. Like, again, this is one I think the market's kind of mispricing a little bit. So another one I'm
Have
pretty
you
bullish
done the
on.
voice thing? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So some of them will just let you like talk about whatever you want. Now they're finding, like in the US, especially like English, that a lot of these models have a lot of English to go off of that they scrape through the internet and everything. They're looking for more situational stuff. So like emotion, reading emotion. Like if let's say like two people having an argument would be like 10 times more valuable than just like a normal voice data set. So that's where like at first, the other thing that I think is really cool, by the way, is they're preserving languages. So I didn't realize this, but in a lot of areas of the world, dialects are basically going extinct on a daily basis. So they are collecting from like certain dialects, certain tribes, etc., to try to preserve dialects. But back to your question, like when you sign up for a campaign, some of them are just like open where you can just talk, for an hour. Some will give you like cues on different questions it'll ask you to answer. Some will ask for certain emotions. So definitely worth checking out. Like you can make extra money. And again, I think their token to me seems criminally undervalued for what they're doing, but I think it's one that they originally started off with collecting noise pollution data and they pivoted to this because there's a huge market. I don't think the market's kind of figured it out yet.
Okay, so it's not something where it's like, okay, you download something and then we listen to your conversation and then you get paid or anything like that.
No, it's you go to their platform, you find it matches you up with campaigns, and then you decide when to start it, and then you like participate for that hour and give your voice
Okay.
data. So yeah, it's not like it's listening to you all the time like that. No.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna understand me though, because I have difficulties pronouncing some words and I speak Spanglish.
Well, I don't know. I mean, what you do, I put in the languages you speak, like where you're from, and they do a pretty good job of matching you up based on like your region and everything. So it's worth a try, for sure.
I'll look into it because that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a super cool project. Love what they're doing there. I have to bring up Helium because this is like really the pioneer of the space. This is one that's been around a little bit longer. Like the other ones I mentioned, to me, have the most upside because they're lower market cap. They haven't had a lot of dilution. They're hitting kind of the trends where I think things are going, like robotics, AI. And I think for me, they haven't had their moment yet either. Like none of those have really gone off on the charts yet. So those are all ones that I think in the upcoming cycle, as the market comes back, could do really well. This one has been around for a while. Their chart hasn't been great, but whereas their market cap really went up off a hype in the last market cycle, they found their stride. So what Helium is doing, they're working with the likes of like AT&T and Verizon. I'll use AT&T as an example. These telecoms are looking to expand their network, and they install these or they build out these towers, and you still find certain areas. If you go into like your gym or a restaurant or whatever, you have horrible service. So they have a really hard time with their towers getting adequate service inside of buildings. And what they've done is they've teamed up with Helium. So they have Wi-Fi offload hardware that you can install inside a business. And if you're on AT&T, when you walk in, you seamlessly move from their towers onto this hotspot inside the business. So you still have a really good connection. And they pay Helium for the AT&T. They're also working with a huge telecom down in Mexico, and they just expanded into Brazil. And we look at them, their price is way down from the last market cycle, but they did bottom, about 81 cents. So they're up quite a bit since then, like 40%. But, still, if you look at their revenue, annualized, they're at about 17.2 million. But their revenue is growing. And the other thing I want to point out with these projects, like they have the revenue supports the token price. Okay, so when I think they're working with AT&T, all these projects, the vast majority of them are working with Web 2 customers. So one of the big problems with crypto has been the speculative nature, where it's mostly just recycled money within crypto. From one project to the next. This is bringing outside revenue in, and a percentage of that revenue is used to buy tokens and then burn them out of supply. So what you're seeing here is that they have so much revenue coming in that they're actually burning more than the new emissions. So their supply is actually decreasing and becoming more scarce because of that revenue. So you think about the forces that can drive a token price up, having a more scarce, it'd be like a stock buyback in a sense. That generally would be very bullish for the token price. So that's what Helium's doing. And one other one is Glow. They're financing solar systems. So that one's pretty cool. Right now, they're at an $8 million market cap. I'm going to actually have them on Tuesday. I'm interviewing their founders. So I do this every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. I interview a lot of founders, so worth checking out. And that's what I got. Yeah, check it out. It's be good. So there's the DePIN projects that I've been mostly focused on. I know that's
okay. I am definitely going to replay the show and go and watch all of the ones that you shared and learn and study them a little bit more, because you gave us a lot of nuggets. And Helium, I had actually learned about them a couple of years ago at a college conference, the Midwest conference that I guess Evan Solomon founded a few years ago, or I think, yeah, it was Michigan. It was at the Michigan University, and then a lot of colleges attended. And I remember that there was, and I still have that interview. I'm telling you, I have a lot of interviews that we never really released or dropped. And they were actually building like a telecom type of system. Can't remember what it was, but it was going to be on Helium. And I don't know whatever happened to that. So I'm actually going to go back and find that video, research it to see where they are. And I was asking them, how they were going to utilize, the way that phone system works. I understand what it's AT&T and stuff like that. So they were saying that they were going to power it, I think, through like Starlink and something like that. And then it was going to connect through Helium. I don't remember exactly how it was going to work, but I thought it was very interesting. So I was like, I wonder whatever happened to them.
Well, Helium, it depends on how long ago this was, because Helium started off as like an IoT network. So it wasn't like they weren't working with the mobile.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were working like for sensors to connect to their network.
Yeah.
And frankly, like that was never going to drive meaningful revenue. It was a really cool concept. It was like, they're like, hey, let's see if we can make this work. Because Helium been around for a long time. And then they're like, let's see if we can use tokens to build out this network. And it works way better than they thought. And then, of course, this is during the last market cycle where everything got wildly overvalued. So they really didn't have the IoT network never really had a chance, in my opinion. It was being used, but just not driving the revenue. This move to work with these other telecoms, I think now we're seeing like real revenue. The problem is, though, with the token, and we've seen this with a lot of projects, is like they had a lot of early emissions and they had to test things out to see what would work. And now they found product market fit, but of course, those early emissions now are still out there for sell pressure. They've got to kind of work through that with this revenue for a period of time. And I think, we saw the token price really drop down. Now we're seeing it bounce back. I think over time, as they work through some of those early emissions, we will see the token appreciate as they continue to drive more revenue. But, that's, them being a pioneer in the space, they kind of made a lot of the mistakes that now these other projects can learn from. So, I have to tip my hat to them, but that is a big reason why their token price has performed the way it has.
Yep, love it. Okay, do you have a few minutes to do a rapid fire questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin.
Macro charts or on-chain data?
Macro charts.
Deploying nodes or trading tokens?
Trading tokens now. Yeah.
Gold or Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Okay, live streaming or X Spaces?
Live streaming.
Bear market building or bull market chaos?
Oh man, that's tough. I like the bull markets because that's when I get to reap the benefits from my bear market building.
Abso-freaking-lutely, yes. Okay, hardware infrastructure or pure software networks?
Hardware infrastructure.
Privacy or transparency?
Transparency.
Okay, centralized convenience or decentralized control?
Decentralized control.
All right. With that being said, if someone watching tonight is curious about this space but unsure where they belong in it, what would you tell them about finding their place in something that's still being built?
Oh man, there's a lot going on in this space right now. For me, like I think having a base knowledge of what's going on with how blockchain works is really important. I think if you want to get in this space, I highly encourage you to take like even an introductory level blockchain course just to kind of know enough to be dangerous. And then I would say you want to find the people that have solid communities that are trustworthy. I know that can be hard to find, but you know, people that aren't super shilly, and drown out the noise. But I'd say the most important thing though is finding what you're really good at and passionate about. Like for me, DePIN is something I found I was super passionate about, and I live and breathe it. Lean on your skill sets. Like I'm not a dev, right? I don't spend my time developing stuff. I invest in the devs that I think are really good at what they do. So I'd say find the thing you're passionate about and really good at. And if you can find, something that overlaps in that in the space, really hone in on that. And then for the other stuff, like find people that are really good at those other things and then invest in those people, is that what I would say. But the really important thing though is like, once you find that niche, find the leaders in those niches, and then that can help you find these projects, because then you can get into the Discord, you can communicate with people and those communities and really dive in. But that would be how I would probably approach it if you're just getting in.
I love that. Do you want to leave us with a quote or any final parting words?
Oh man. Yeah, I would say the market's been down. If you're just getting in, like it's actually a pretty fortunate time for you to be entering. Most people come in the bull market, and that's when you get, absolutely wrecked, because that's when things are really toppy. While the market's down, it's really a good time to be getting in to these different projects. But I'd say definitely do your research, because the 99% of the stuff out there is just kind of like BS. Find the utility stuff, but just really grind. Be looking to learn as much as you can, especially while the market's down, because once the market takes off, like there would be no looking back. A lot of these projects that you're seeing at these market caps won't be there anymore. So I'd say just really try to dial in right now while the market's down and everyone's kind of bored of it.
You heard him here. And for everybody watching or tuning in the future, conversations like this remind us that behind every idea, every network, and every piece of technology, there are people asking questions, building, learning, and trying to shape something better than what came before. So thank you for being part of this conversation tonight. To all our listeners, to people in the chat, DePIN Connection, thank you so much for coming on the show and having this awesome conversation, teaching us a little bit, educating us, giving us your thoughts. And until next time, everyone, stay curious and stay unscripted. Bye-bye. Bye. Till next time.